What is up, everybody? Hey, Chris McLean here with Hater Radio. I'm a little flustered. We had a long day today. We were driving back from the Sequoia National Forest and got in like 2 hour traffic jam. I would have been here a lot sooner and would have been on time, but just a lot going on. So I apologize for the lateness. I know we're only like 15 minutes late, but still, I try to keep it as timely as we can so that we get a regular, viewership here going with Hater Radio, which Hater Radio is a college football media brand. I'm the host usually, and my co-host is usually Ian Gibson. He's not here tonight, but it's just me. So we're going to try to go through as much as we can. I will apologize in advance because I didn't get to go over all of the highlights because of obviously traveling today, which took much longer than I anticipated. It took about 6 hours, which it should have only taken like a little over 4. So it definitely threw a wrench into the gears. But here I am, and I'm here to do the show. So we'll make up for it as best we can. So let's do it. Let's talk about these games. The first one I want to talk about from yesterday, probably the biggest win out of the 4 teams that we cover is the UCLA Washington State game. Just a huge win for UCLA. I mean, I know I talk about them, but I don't know if enough people know about how good this team is. They really stood firm in this game and made enough plays. I know Dante Moore had those 2 interceptions, but it didn't end up biting them because they were pretty well ahead most of the game. I know the one was a pick 6, so that really was a problem there, but they kept Cam Ward in check. He was his completion percentage was about 50%. He had 2 interceptions himself. Carson Steele went off. I mean, every highlight I saw of him, he was going for like 6 yards a clip, and just a sick day for him. 30 carries for 140 yards. Dante had a great game besides the interceptions, 290 yards. They were doing some end around plays where whoever it was this, I think it was the same player. It was what's his face. Let's see. Okay. It was Keegan Jones. He had the same exact play coming from I think it was the far hash, the far right hash coming over on like an end around basically, and just going right through and just dicing right through the Washington State defense. Got those 2 late scores, and they honestly, man, I know people probably don't know too much about UCLA, but if you are watching the show, you are a fan of college football, start to appreciate this team, because even though they may not be a playoff team this year, with Dante Moore going forward and Chip Kelly seemingly staying there, I don't see him leaving at this point. This is going to be a team to watch next year and definitely the year after that. But this year is going to be still a really good team because it's not just Dante Moore, it's the surrounding cast. The defense has gotten a lot better with their new D coordinator, Lynn, taking over. And their defense looks night and day different from what they were last year. And even in that loss to Utah, they played remarkably well defensively and holding them to only 7 points after that pick 6 to start the game. So 1 loss for UCLA. They beat Washington State here. They have a tough road going for the rest of the season. But they had their bye week before this game. So who knows what can happen. I can see a 10-win season. I definitely can see it. So, anything is possible for this team, and I'm excited for them. Okay. Next game, close game, the USC Arizona game. I mean, what a thrilling game. I mean, I watched it all last night because I was just like curious to see how the offense was going to do. More so the defense. I'm really, but just defense. as much as the defense struggled at a lot of points in this game, they came up with two huge plays. The interception after the fumble that they had, getting that turnover there, and then that kind of jump started the offense a little bit, got them moving a little bit more. And then the momentum started shifting because then USC kept scoring. Caleb struggled all night. He was a low completion percentage most of the night. I think he ended up with, a little over 50%. But his rushing was really key in a lot of points. And definitely that play, because he had 3 touchdowns on the ground. But that 2-point conversion, God, man, it was so close, razor thin where his foot was going to be on that line. And he doesn't touch the line, and he gets over on the at the end zone. It just, man, like huge to get that 2-point conversion, because the next conversion try by Arizona, just the defense again made plays when they needed to, came in and stuffed them, and that was the game. And as much as it's like, oh, it's Arizona, I'm almost positive that USC lost to this Arizona team last year, and or maybe it was UCLA. Either way, it's a team that it can beat good teams, and it's to take them lightly like they did, because they were down 17-0, and like they easily could have lost this game, but the defense made enough plays to be able to keep them in it, and then the offense did great things to be able to capitalize. The run game was actually really well. Marshawn Lloyd, I don't know why he wasn't getting the ball more. He had 15 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown. He should have got the ball more, but whatever. They were spreading it around. But either way, USC gets the win, setting up next week against Notre Dame. We'll talk about what happened to Notre Dame in a little bit, but either way, USC still moving on. A lot to play for. The Heisman is still attainable for Caleb. I still have him up there, probably 1 or 2 right now. And then USC is definitely in the mix for the playoff. Next game, we've got the USF UAB game. I don't know, man. It's definitely a work in progress with this team. They're 3-3 right now, so it's not the end of the world to lose a game like this. But UAB coming into this game was 1-4. And, their offense wasn't lighting the world on fire, but they, for whatever reason, I mean, what I saw in this game as far as tackling from USF wasn't necessarily broken tackles. It was more so bad angles at trying to make the tackles. And that was the difference, because it was like guys, the safeties that should have made the play, and they would take a bad angle, and then the guy would be gone. And they wouldn't even basically even touch him. So it's like not necessarily broken tackles. It's just more bad angles. The offense did some things. They got the 35 points. I think someone had said on Twitter where it was like, if they had gone for field goals on some of those 4th downs, it could have been like an extra 18 points their way, which would have made the game a lot closer. I think that would have been, I think it was like a 50-something 35 game. What was it? 56-35. So 18. Yeah, that would have been a 1-score game. That would have been a 3-point game. I mean, I don't know. You really never know, because it's like, obviously Coach Golish is going to take chances here. He's of the mindset of trying to roll the dice and give the offense as many opportunities to score 7 as they can. They were in a game where they were already down, I think by halftime, they were down 35-14. So they were down 21 already. You pretty much have to roll the dice at that point, the rest of the game out. I don't blame him for that. I wish maybe you want to take some points, but I don't know. It's if your offense is moving the ball, which they were, I still think you want to take the chances. Obviously, in the beginning of the game with those turnovers, Byron Brown had a fumble and an interception right away in the beginning of the game. If those don't happen, there's a chance that this game is a lot different. Brown still had 4 touchdowns, over nearly 400 yards of offense. This is a young team, going to learn a lot as they're going. I'm not expecting the world out of this team. I would like a bowl game if they can get to it. 6 wins right now at 3-3 is obtainable, especially with FAU and UConn coming up next 2 weeks. They could easily win those games. They should win those games. And then we'll see from there. The rest of the schedule is a little tougher. They got UTSA and Memphis. Those are going to be really tough games. But I like the offense, and I like their chances in any game they play because of the offense, because they can score on anyone. Okay, moving on to Florida and Vanderbilt. I don't know. I'm not as negative as most of these people are that are on Twitter that are Florida fans. And I'll say it really got to me this week, because it was not only there was negativity with Florida after the Kentucky loss, but then there was like negativity with the Rays losing as well, and like the attendance being an issue. And so I just was like, I had a hard time going on Twitter all week. It was really tough because I'm not a negative person. I don't really deal with negativity that great. I try to be as positive as I can, and at the same time be a realist as well. So yes, more positive, but try to stay as realistic as I can. And just with the negativity, God, man, if people were like, there have been plenty of people that say fire Scott Strickland forever and, fire Billy. And then it just got worse this week. And it's just like, you know what? I don't even know what it would do. Like, really, they rank Florida's athletics department as one of the best in the country for several years. And especially recently, they've been ranking it highly. I don't know. Scott Strickland, I think, is doing a good job. Obviously, the 2 money sports, men's basketball and football, need to be better. Looks like Todd Golden is going to do something there. But really, the focus is on Billy right now. Billy Napier needs to do better. He got the win against Tennessee, but now the loss against Kentucky. And then coming into this game, they had lost to Vanderbilt last year and didn't look good last year. And it looked terrible against a 5-win Vanderbilt team. And, but in this game, they played really well offensively. Arlis Boardingham went off. And I think a lot of people were talking about him before the year. So it wasn't like we didn't know about this guy, but it was like we were waiting for him to pop off. And it finally came in this game. And he, because he was targeted 7 times and caught 7 balls. So he caught everything that was thrown his way. He's a big body, so he can definitely take on blocks. He's something that the team has not had probably since Kyle Pitts. And he's obviously not as good as Kyle Pitts, but I'm just saying, even remotely athletic and gifted as Arlis Boardingham is. And so it is a pleasure to see a tight end finally take the grasp. And, I love Zipper. He's just been hurt. I wish he would be back because he's perfectly adequate as a tight end. But I think Boardingham has potential to be something better. And, where he goes from here, we don't know. There was a lot of other strong points or stars in this game. Montrell Johnson went off. He had a lot of really good runs. Tryon Webb had a really good run in the second half, I believe. And Graham Mertz, solid again. He had a little touchdown to Eugene Wilson. And, that was whatever. It still counts as a pass. But he had 3 TDs and for 254 passing yards and 30 for 36. So his completion percentage is through the roof. And, you can't ask for more with that. Honestly, he is, adequate at what he's doing. He's not amazing, but he's definitely doing the job enough to keep low turnovers, put them in position to score. And, they red zone, they scored, I think, almost every opportunity. And I think the one was a field goal, and that was the later one. And so basically every opportunity was scored a touchdown. So they were, I think, 5 out of 5 in the red zone. And, 495 yards of offense. They looked really good, and the defense looked great. They had a lot of success on third down efficiency, 1 of 10 for Vanderbilt. And then Vanderbilt was 0-3 on fourth downs. They got one technically, but they lost the fumble as they were converting it. So it goes down as a non-conversion. But I don't know. This is a good step forward, especially coming off a loss where the Kentucky game was an embarrassment. And like I said, throw that game out the window, throw it out. We don't even need to look at it anymore. Let's move on. And they did. They moved on. They did really well. They performed as best as this team is going to. This is what this team is. They're not going to throw 50-yard passes every other drive. They're just not going to do it. They may throw 1 or 2 a game. But either way, I will say with Eugene Wilson healthy, this team is a lot different than without Eugene Wilson, because Eugene does a lot of stuff that is, not really showing up in the other games where, on those jet sweep motions, on those pre-snap motions before, if it's Eugene, they're definitely looking into the backfield and keeping an eye on him and making sure they know where number 3 is. And he made a lot of plays. I mean, he didn't touch the ball a ton, but he still had, let me see. I guess all his plays were catches, because it's all those touch passes. He had 8 catches for 64 yards and a TD. So that's a solid day for coming back from injury. I really like the kid. I can't wait to see what he does more. The other kid, Andy Jean, is a really good receiver as well. We saw him a little bit here in some of the games last 2 weeks against Charlotte and Kentucky. So we'll see more of him, hopefully. And, Ricky had a good game. He had a rushing touchdown as far as a couple of catches. And like I said, Boardingham was a stud. So overall, a good game for Florida, setting up next week against South Carolina on the road. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. So let's move on to these other games real quick. And I'm going to call it a day because I didn't see a ton of these highlights. Because like I said, I watched as much as I could this morning at like 5 a.m, but I couldn't really watch the rest of it because I've been driving for 6 hours. So I saw the highlights for Oklahoma, Texas. What a hell of a game. I watched most of the first half before we went to the Trail of 100 Giants in the Sequoia National Forest, which was amazing. It was a great time. Great trail, great hike there. But Oklahoma just pulls off the win with a last-second touchdown. Just an amazing win for them. I feel bad for Texas because it's like, man, they're like, this is their year. They finally are, they're finally going to get into the playoff and officially say we're back, but they lose this game. But it actually doesn't matter because if both these teams win out, they're both going to play in the Big 12 championship game. And that could be the de facto decider who goes to the CFP. But also maybe not, because if they both get 1 loss and the rest of these teams in the country get maybe 2 losses, they both get in. But I will say this year is much tougher for any 2-loss team this year because of how good the Pac-12 is and the possibility that the Pac-12 could have at least 2 teams with 1 loss and maybe even more. So it's going to be interesting what happens. And, like I said, with Florida State, if they have 1 loss, they're probably not going to get in. And I know they look like, oh, we have a win against LSU and Clemson, but those LSU wins, that LSU win doesn't look as good now. And that Clemson win doesn't look that great either because they both have 2 losses. And FSU, they have to win out. And if they lose to someone like Wake or maybe even Miami, who Miami has now as a loss, doesn't look as good. So we'll see. We'll talk about Florida State in a little bit. But as far as the Oklahoma-Texas game, I mean, it was a thriller. It really was. I wish I could have watched all of it. But, like I said, I was on vacation, so there's not much I could do. Quinn Ewers had a great game except for the turnovers. He had a ton of turnovers, especially early, that really kind of set them back. Texas got that punt block for a touchdown and kind of erased that a little bit. But then Oklahoma just kept moving the ball, making plays when they needed to. Texas scored late and put them ahead. I think they were up by, what was it? They were up by 3. And so, Oklahoma didn't have to score a touchdown if necessarily. They could have just held on to the ball and got the field goal to tie at the end. But they scored the touchdown. And, man, what a great game. Last time between these two in the Big 12. Next year it'll be in the SEC. I'm looking forward to it. Both these teams are stepping their game up. They look really good. And coming into the SEC, that's going to be a huge, I don't know how to describe it now. The SEC is going to be, it's already been the best conference for the last 20 years. With these two coming in, I mean, I know the Big Ten has some good teams and they're adding more. And I will say that the fact that they're adding USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon adds a lot of credence to that conference. And I will have to change my tune because of those 4 teams coming in. But the SEC with these two, I don't know. It's tough to beat this. And it's going to be a very interesting several couple of years to see what happens, especially with the playoff now, because these teams will play each other a lot and probably have a few losses. Like I said, with the playoff, the 12-team playoff coming up, there's going to be more teams with 2, maybe even 3 losses getting into the playoff. And now it's like, if you lose a game, it's not that big of a deal. So we'll see a lot of these teams in the SEC get in. We'll see a lot of the Big Ten teams get in. And then we'll see maybe a couple, maybe 1 or 2 from the Big 12 and the ACC. Okay, moving on. Maryland, Ohio State. I did not see the highlights from this other than random stuff throughout the day. They always try to hype up this Maryland game because Maryland comes in undefeated usually when they come to play Ohio State, and it's usually the first week in October. And Ohio State usually stomps them. And it not necessarily was a stomping, but 37-17 is not a close game. And, Ohio State obviously scored later to really run away from them. But still, I don't know. I never have had faith in this Maryland team. They win these early games because they play bad teams, and then they look great because their offense scores a lot of points against tomato cans. And then when they actually have to play a good defense like Ohio State's, then they crumble. And, this Kyle McCord kid, we don't know too much about him yet. I mean, he obviously played okay against Notre Dame and seemingly did well here. But again, Maryland is not that good. So we'll have to see once they play against Penn State and Michigan to really get a good idea of how good McCord is. But as of right now, Ohio State is undefeated and they have a lot to play for. So we'll see how the rest of their year runs out. Okay, next one, LSU, Missouri. Missouri got up big in this game, and I'm surprised they did not win this game. I thought going into the game that LSU would win this game, but I did not expect Missouri to dominate as much as they did at first. And they went up big. Brady Cook had 395 yards, but LSU kept coming back. They made big plays. They made a couple of turnovers on Brady Cook, a couple of interceptions, one by Harold Perkins, and then one late to seal it. That was returned for a pick 6. But, Luther Burden, if you don't know that guy's name, you really need to know his name because he is a stud. He was a 5-star coming out of high school, and just the kid's sick. He's got a lot of talent. The rest of Missouri is like okay. Cody Schrader's all right. They're running back, 114 yards, but really it's Burden. He's definitely their main focus. And, if you look at LSU, they have a lot of players. Neighbors went off. Their running back, Logan Diggs, went off. And Jaden Daniels had a great game again. I don't know what to make with this LSU team. They definitely are weak when it comes to the defensive side. They made some plays to win this game, but they were struggling mightily to stop Missouri. And I'm surprised because, I don't think highly of Missouri as their offense. They obviously are better than years past, but I still don't think they're amazing. They're like a top 15 offense. But LSU's defense has just been historically bad. It was really bad in this game. They're lucky to get the win. They get the win. They only have 2 losses, only 1 SEC loss. So a lot to still be played for them. They're not out of anything. Out of the playoff, probably, but potentially they still have a chance to get to the SEC championship game in Atlanta. Okay, moving on to Virginia Tech, Florida State. There's not much to say here. I watched the game. I will say Trey Benson, of course, looked good in this game because he's playing a terrible team. He only plays well against terrible teams. All last year, he struggled against better teams. This year, and even though I will say LSU's not a good defense, he struggled against LSU. He struggled against Clemson. I just don't think he's as good as they hyped him up to be. He's a good back, probably an average ACC back, but he's not to the level that I think Florida State fans want to believe that he is. They believe that he's like maybe an All-American. He's definitely not an All-American. He may be like 3rd team ACC, maybe. That's if he gets his numbers up. He had one good game here against a bad team. They have some games against Duke, which he'll probably struggle against. Wake, I don't know how good their defense is, but their offense should be able to move the ball a little bit. And Miami, obviously we'll talk about Miami a little bit later. And then Florida. And Florida has a really good run defense, so they should be able to stop him. But they struggled last year against him, I will say that. But again, that's a completely different Florida defense from this year to last year. Okay, but Florida State wins 39-17. So it was close at one point, but then Florida State, took control of that game, and it was like a at least 2-score game for most of this game. Okay. Next game, Alabama, Texas A&M. Again, I apologize. I did not get a chance to see these highlights. I saw some of them as games were going on. Alabama wins 26-20. That's a huge win. I am telling you, man, this Alabama team feels very sneakily good to the point where holding A&M, a decent offense so far this year, to only 20 points is a huge win. And this defense is good. This is the strong suit of Alabama this year. I think Nick knew that coming in. He's like, you know what? We're going to have to really ride these guys. And, they're going to be the top dogs for our team. And we're going to have to, focus on making stops. And I think he realized that. That's why he was a little confident coming into the SEC media days. And, Milroe, 320 yards, 3 TDs, 21 of 33. Not a bad day. Jermaine Burton, 197 yards receiving. I don't know. I mean, the offense is a work in progress. They obviously move the ball quite well and, held A&M to 306 yards of total offense. So there is a chance that this team can really turn it around, and they've already done it. They beat A&M. They beat Ole Miss. Those are the 2 top teams in the West right now besides LSU. Really, they only have LSU left to beat, and they're going to be in the SEC championship game. And if they're undefeated in the SEC championship game and they beat Georgia, they're going to the playoff. So boom, people were like ready to bury Nick Saban when this team is clearly a very good team, and especially defensively. Okay, moving on. Syracuse, North Carolina. Only saw a few highlights, but Drake May went off again. You know, Drake May, again, is a stud quarterback that I guess because he hasn't played like really good teams, not much is being talked about him. I like talking about him because I know he's going to be a top pick in this draft. 33 of 47, 442 yards, 3 TDs. Stud day. They got back their wide receiver. What was his name? What's the kid that won the appeal? I can't remember his name. Either way, he didn't have like an amazing day, but he's still now in the mix. And they got a lot of really good receivers. You know, they had 2 receivers go over 100 yards. They're definitely in the mix for the ACC championship game and potentially a playoff spot. So they don't play Florida State, but they do play Miami, I think, next week. And I think North Carolina also plays Clemson. Yeah, they play Clemson second to last game of the year, and Duke. So Duke and Clemson and Miami, those are the 3 games that they got to win out here to really get a shot at the ACC championship game, which right now is kind of wide open. Miami has a loss, so we'll see what happens there with them. But North Carolina's right there undefeated. Clemson has two losses, so I don't know about Clemson right now. They'd have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get through that because they play Miami, North Carolina, and already lost to Duke and Florida State. So it's going to be real tough for them. I'm interested to see what happens with Duke. They had a bye week this week with Riley Leonard hurt, high ankle sprain. Is he going to come back in time for that Florida State game? I don't know as of right now. I would venture a guess that he would if they are able to let's see if they can manage the NC State game next week, because that would be around 3 weeks leeway. I mean, they also play Louisville, and I forgot Louisville is another team as well. So there's like 4 or 5 teams that are in the mix for the ACC championship game, and I am curious with this Duke Florida State game. You know, I don't think they should play him against NC State because they probably could beat NC State without it, because NC State is just kind of whatever this year. But even if they have 1 loss there, they probably want them in the Florida State game if they want any chance at the ACC championship game. Okay, moving on to just UNC won 40-7 over Syracuse. Next game, UCF Kansas. Man, you know what, man? It is what it is. I said before the beginning of the year that UCF was going to have a not a reckoning, but just a realization of who they were, and losing, to Kansas this badly is not a good look. They're now 0-3 in conference play, losing 51-22, and that was without Kansas's star quarterback Jalen Daniels. They ran the ball all over UCF, and 399 yards on the ground, just a demolishing. This game was never close. And you know what? I'm not going to bury him here because USF did bad as well. So it is what it is at this point. I don't expect UCF to win more than 5 or 6 games this year, and it looks like it's evident. It's going to be a struggle. Like, they will be lucky to win 5 or 6 games. Okay, next one, Kentucky, Georgia. I did watch the highlights of this one. This was a blowout, and again, I'm not surprised because seemingly every year it feels like Kentucky plays no one for 3 or 4 games, and then they're fully healthy coming into the Florida game, and they play their best effort against Florida and have won 4 out of the last 6, which is at this point a really good run for them. And then it seems like after they win that game, they go on to play Georgia and they get smacked. And it's usually bad. And this was 51-13. This was never close. I think it was 21-0 like early in the second quarter. It was not fun to watch. Kentucky is not up to the level of Georgia. And I will say this is definitely Georgia's best game so far this year. So maybe they're turning the corner. They have who do they play next? They play Vanderbilt, so they basically get a week off, and then they'll have a bye week, so they get 2 bye weeks, and then they play in Jacksonville for the cocktail party. So, but their last 4 games besides that are pretty tough because Missouri only has 1 loss. They play Ole Miss that only has 1 loss, Tennessee with 1 loss, and then this Georgia Tech team looks pretty lively. They don't look terrible. They're not the same team in the last couple of years that was stinking up the joint. But let's move on. Michigan, Minnesota. Minnesota, not a team that I've thought too highly of. And, Michigan is playing their weak schedule that they keep playing. And it's like, okay, here they go. They won again, 52-10. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really care about these wins. They're not impressing anyone. I know their defense is good, but it's like you're literally playing a terrible team, a 3-3 team. It's not a good team. It would be a bottom feeder of the SEC. They'd be lucky to win 2 or 3 games in the SEC. And their schedule is just a joke. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota. Are you kidding me? This is disgusting. Indiana and Michigan State sucks this year. Literally, they're playing 2 games this year. They're playing Penn State and Ohio State. That is it. They have a 2-game schedule. The rest of these should be 30-point victories, and it's not even – this isn't football, man. I don't know how you enjoy this as a Michigan fan. Like, I would be livid that this is what non-conference schedule you deliver to them. I don't know. I mean, I guess you want to get in the playoff. Next year it won't matter because you're going to get it in no matter what. But it's like now it's like, I don't know. They don't set themselves up well because they're not playing against a ton of tough teams. So they're not ready for late December, January football. And it shows every year. They got smoked against Georgia 2 years ago, and they got butt whooped against TCU. Okay. Notre Dame, Louisville. I am surprised with this. I don't know what's going on with Notre Dame's offense. They ended up scoring 20, but Louisville put 33 up. Louisville had like a ton of field goals in the fourth quarter. I think it was like at least 3 or 4, but it was, Louisville was pretty dominant. They controlled the ball. Sam Hartman had 3 interceptions. That's a lot of mistakes to try to overcome. And now 2 losses, playoff probably out of reach. I thought they were going to be better, but I was wrong. I had a lot of hope for them, especially with Sam Hartman coming in. They struggled in this game immensely. And, Louisville is just a better team. And maybe Louisville now will take the mantle, and we'll see where they go. They're up to number 14 in the top 25 rankings today. So they have a tough schedule coming up. Louisville's got Duke in 2 weeks, or no, at the end of the month. Then they have Miami, and Kentucky will be a tough game. It's always a rivalry game. So that's actually not that tough of a schedule. They could easily beat Duke if Riley Leonard is hurt. And this Miami team, I'm not that scared of. Dude, Louisville, look out. And I actually would love to see Louisville go up against Florida State. That's probably the team that could definitely beat them in the ACC championship game. Okay. Arkansas, Ole Miss. This is a wacky game, back and forth. Ole Miss wins 27-20. Razorbacks are 2-4. I don't think anybody saw that coming. A lot of people had a lot of love for them coming into the season to compete for the SEC West, and it's just ugly right now. But I feel bad for them because, you know, they seem to be projecting up, but now it's, you know, taking a seat back. I don't know. Maybe they may resurrect things. You know, maybe KJ Jefferson corrects things, maybe kind of eliminates the turnovers. We'll see. It's going to need a lot of help going forward. And I have this one last because this was hilarious. I was dying laughing at this game. Georgia Tech wins 23-20 against Miami. Last second play. They shouldn't even have the ball. All Miami had to do was kneel down, and it was over. It was literally over. They don't kneel down. They hand it off to the running back. He fumbles it. They get the ball. They march down the field, and then Haynes King with just a great throw. The guy was wide open, so it wasn't that hard of a throw, but still gets the guy, and he just runs in the end zone. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Just a crazy ending. All the Miami fans have been talking crap a lot about Florida recently, and it's just, I don't know. It's funny to watch some of these things happen. It was definitely one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a coach do. Like, come on, man. You should not be doing this. Like, kneel the ball, end the game. Like, it was like kneel down, and I think there was like 30 seconds left, and it would have like gotten close, but still, like, man, kneel the freaking ball. Cut out all possibility of a mistake, and they didn't, and they lost. And it just, this is why you watch the games to the end, because I had stopped watching it. I had it on my phone, and I was like, oh, this is over, because they got the first down. And then I don't know what, for some reason I'm like, oh, let me check it out again real quick. And I put it on, and boom, they had the ball. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so Georgia Tech gets the win, and this Tech team is feisty, and I'm glad to see, because for years they've been terrible. If they can actually win, 8-9 games, I think most Tech fans would be happy with that. Not that it's possible this year, but maybe they're setting themselves up for years, for the years to come. But that's it. That's the show. Ian had some thoughts, but I'm just cutting the show short today because of just how tired I am. And I'm actually going to Knott's Berry Farm tonight for their Not Scary Farm stuff. So I've got a long night ahead of me as well. So I'll be up till at least probably midnight or 1. But I'm glad I got the show in. Glad anyone that saw it. I'll upload it to YouTube later. If you didn't catch the live, check our articles. We'll have more later. It's going to be haterradio.com. And then for our socials, it is hater_radio for Insta, Threads, TikTok, and Twitter or X. And then for Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. And for YouTube to find us, the channel is @Hater Radio. That's the show. What a crazy week, especially that Miami finish. Enjoy college baseball. I know the Rays are out, but these games are still interesting. There's a lot of different things going on, but that's it. I'll see you Wednesday, guys. Take care.